Welcome back, guys. This is Overkill bringing you another basic fundamentals for the F-14 Tomcat. Today we'll be going over pilot seat 2, where we discuss all the instruments that required power in order to take a peek at. But first, I want to correct a few mistakes that I made in the previous videos, so stand by for those. Alright, so the first thing I want to correct. Here, the chief told me, or the chief jester told me, to check the combined engine power and make sure that or combined hydraulic pressure and make sure it reaches 3,000. I made the assumption that the two of them together were combined, okay? And the information I've recently received states that the negative combined is the left engine. So combined hydraulic pressure does not mean left and right hydraulic. It means the pressure of the negative, i.e. left, hydraulic system. Okay? So, wanted to make sure that I corrected that. So we're going to kick the left switch over, because that was the instruction. And we're making sure it hits 3,000. And it does. So then, as you requested, back to the center position and move on with your checklist. Check. Okay, so the next thing that I spoke incorrectly on was when I said that this was the left and right trim. It is the left and right rear stabilizers. So it is the position of those two guys right there. So that's the right one. There's a left one. That's the wings on the bottom there. Those are the horizontal stabilizers. Okay, so that's what the trim is indicating, is the position of them. Alright. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys real quick was, I know in my previous tutorial I showed you guys how to move the wing sweep back by bringing this lever up and moving the handle back manually. But that's emergency mode, that's not manual mode. So we're going to leave it connected to the CAD system. Okay, now when I come here, you can see we're in manual, but also make sure that you have these guys bound. Remember these guys, so your wing sweep aft, auto, bomb, and forward. If I hit the aft mode, notice it's not doing anything. And the reason being is because the flaps are down. So if I bring the flaps up, and then now I can move, just with those buttons that I showed you there, the wings down to the 50 degrees, which is what he asks for. And the wings will sweep. Okay? So same thing going forward. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that I corrected that as well, because I don't want you guys trying to pull that cover up and use the handle while you're trying to fly. Alright? So, moving on. Okay, and this will be the last one, the AR-63 bit. Last time my servers looked at it, said, yeah, we're good, and told it check. Okay, I skipped a bunch of steps here. So I wanted to redo this part. So what he's looking for is to make sure that the navigation system is working, the ILS, things of that nature. So we're going to switch it. So first, excuse me, we're going to go into ILS mode. ILS mode. We're going to go into landing mode and the AWL PCD mode. And then we're going to hit our bit. And now you can see the needles flying across the HUD and on the VDI. Okay, so that was the correct way to perform that bit. And actually, one more thing I wanted to show you guys that I forgot to show you guys last time was how to actually get your lights to come on. Because if you followed what I did step by step, they probably weren't on. So I've come down here, and I've set all my lights the way I want. Got my nose wheel light on, got my tail lights, my caution lights, all that good crap. Alright, but if we go outside, none of them are on. And what you need is the exterior lights master switch. So if we go to our adjust controls, okay, we can see this guy here. Exterior lights master switch off and on. And if I come outside and I flip it on, all my lights come on at the same time. Turn it off, and it goes dark. Alright, also known as smash on and smash off. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that, and hope I cleared some things up. Please let me know if I make any mistakes in the next one, and hope you enjoy. All right, now that junk's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what we're here to discuss. We're going to go ahead and start with the HUD. Now, before we actually take a look at the display itself, you can come down here and you can see some of the controls that you have options to. Okay, so the mode controls all of your mode settings for the view screen up on the HUD. So you can see that it changes as we go into the different modes. Okay, now none of the weapons are on, things like that, so that's part of why we're not seeing much, but like there's air to ground, and there's landing. Okay. And landing, you get the vertical velocity indicator, or gosh, I always call that the flight path, the vector indicator, excuse me. Go into takeoff, and we'll get that as well once we get airborne. Okay, so let's take a real quick look at the symbology up here. Obviously, just like any other aircraft, we have the pitch scale. Now, talking about the pitch scale real quick, you can come down here to the bottom where it says HUD trim, and if we move that wheel, you lock the camera so I'm not bouncing around for you guys here. Okay, you can see that it's used for fine-tuning the trim, or the pitch scale, excuse me. Alright, so an instance where you might use that, for example, is if you notice you're in perfect horizontal flight, but your horizon line is showing way down here, you may want to bring it up, you know, closer to the flight path indicator, things of that nature. Okay, moving on here. Or if you notice a deviation, for example, from the ADI. Okay, if we take a look at our ADI, we can see that the horizon line is slightly below our datum there. So, same kind of game there. Unpausing our camera and coming back in. Okay, so we've talked about the pitch scale. We obviously have a heading tape here with our heading caret showing the aircraft's current nose heading. We have our vertical velocity indicator showing our ascent and descent rate in thousands of feet per minute. We have our aircraft datum showing the angle of the nose. Okay, this is not to be mistaken with your flight vector indicator. Okay, so remember the little circle will show you exactly where the aircraft's going to end up. The aircraft datum here just shows you the angle of the nose. Okay. And then over here on the right hand side in the takeoff mode, we have our radar altimeter. Okay, and I believe that both of these will change definitely when we switch into cruise mode, but I also believe once we exceed the radar altimeter's limitations, I believe these will change as well, but we'll get confirmation on that when we get airborne. Just a second here. Can't exactly remember off the top of my head, truth be told. Okay, so stepping down a little bit here, one last thing on the HUD. To activate the red light filter, you just pull this lever here, and you can see that the HUD has gone to red, and you also have your brightness knob here, okay, which will change the brightness of the HUD. All right, let's go ahead and secure that. Now, coming down to our VDI, there we go. Okay. So first thing, obviously, you got right on top, you still have your heading tape. Okay, and you have your current heading caret. You can see the +3 and -3 down here. These are plus and negative 30 degrees of incline or descent. Okay, and here you have your waypoint indicator. So if we were to change our waypoints, Jester, Command 5, Command 1, Command 1, and Command 1. Command 1. I said and first, he didn't like that. Alright, so you can see that the waypoint caret or identifier has now changed. Okay, so this helps you fly your waypoints. And again, you still have your pitch scale and your horizon line and bank angle. And then over here you can change the VDI contrast, which doesn't do a whole lot, but the brightness certainly does. Okay. And then again, just like on the HUD, you can trim the pitch scale. Gosh, couldn't think there for a second. Sorry about that. And then if you want to get the red light filter on the VDI, you simply move the mouse. And if you watch the mouse cursor, so yellow, watch it, green. Just left click and you get your filter. Left click again and get it off. Okay? So, good times. All right, let's move on down. I'm going to try to keep this particular video under an hour for once. You know, try something new, see if we like it. Get you guys up and flying faster than normal. Alright, get that stick out of the way. Boom. Okay. So, on the HSD here, we have our heading indicator and course indicator, but they don't work in these particular modes. You have your brightness for the HSD. Okay. We have a test light. Up here at the top, we have our current range to the currently selected waypoint. You have your waypoint indicator here with your course line. Over here, this little guy is the ADF caret. Okay, so if you're using ADF or VOR guidance, I believe it'll work with VOR as well. This is caret will move and show you the correct direction to go. Can't remember if I said it right, so I'm going again. We have our heading and bearing line. So your current heading is up here. Your bearing to a location is here. So for example, if you're directly on course to something that's at, well, this would be about 145 degrees, then down here, the heading would be about, your bearing would be 34 degrees, okay, but 340 degrees. So we'll go over that in a different tutorial if you guys need. All right. Now coming over to the right panel, excuse me, and talking about a few of the modes. I'm not going to go over each one of these individually yet because they're going to come much later when we start getting into combat and deployment, things of that nature. Okay. So, or employment, excuse me. First thing on the HUD, you can hit your declutter switch. You can see that the left-right indicators go away, as well as your heading tape. Okay, you can set the HUD into ILS mode or automatic carrier landing. On your VDI, you can switch to the TV mode, which will show you a mirror image of the lantern pod, so it shows you what the lantern is seeing. Okay, and again, you can also use ILS and the ACL modes, the automatic carrier landing. And then on the bottom HSD, you can mirror the TID or tactical information display. This is what Jess was using in the back, or whomever your Rio is, to lock your targets and give you a tactical view of the battle area. Okay, but again, obviously a much later tutorial, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that right now. All right, and then ECM, if needed, you can override it and activate the ECM. Okay. Over here on the HSI, you can see that it's going sort of crazy right now, spinning around. What this is the TACCAN needle. Okay, so you have your ADF needle here and your TACCAN needle here. And if we were to come over to our TACCAN, for example, and just turn it off, notice the needle has stopped and recentered itself. I think we discussed everything else, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and taxi out to the runway and get her up in the air. I'll see you when we get on the runway. Alright, so we're approaching the runway. I want to show you guys something else real quick on the HSD. So we were talking about ground speed earlier. You can see the GS, that's our taxi speed right now, the 6 knots. So if you're ever wondering how fast you're taxiing, you can look there. And typically you taxi between 15 and 20 knots, give or take. Alright, so we're going to get center lined here. Then we're going to disengage our nose wheel steering. Make sure flaps are down. Okay. What we're going to do is power up to 80%, give or take. Make sure the engines are stable. Then once we get rolling, we're going to go to mill power. For those of you who don't know, mill is the fastest an aircraft can go without the use of afterburners. Okay. We're going to be looking for about 130 knots. At 130 knots, we'll start pulling back on the stick. With our given weight, we should rotate and climb out by about 140, approaching 150 knots. We'll be looking for the 5-degree climb out right here, this indicator for the AOA. We'll try to hold it there. And then once we get a positive rate of climb, we'll be gears up, flaps up, and free to navigate. And we'll start steering towards our first waypoint here. Okay? So, with an 80, brakes, going to mill. Oops, bumped the steering button. Approaching 130, I'm going to start pulling back. a little higher than that 5-degree AOA. Positive rate. Gear up. Flaps up. Start turning towards our waypoint. Start trimming nose up. Now you're going to be constantly trimming her. Every time she changes speed, as the wings change geometry, it's going to be trim, 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 trim. Now, real quick while we're talking about the trim. So one thing that is kind of cool, if you come down to your autopilot and you just hit the engage switch. Okay, that's all I've done here. Normally, when you make an adjustment on the stick, you put it back to center, the aircraft centers itself out. But now watch what we do with the autopilot engaged. So I'm going to turn the aircraft and I'm hands off. And notice how she sticks to where she was before, wherever you leave her. And the trim button no longer functions. Okay, so I'm sitting here pounding my trim button. It's not doing a darn thing. What the aircraft does with that autopilot engage is it holds your controls at their last setting. Okay, so the last configuration. And I think our distance has changed. Yep, we've passed our waypoint. Jester. 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 And let's go ahead and just go to 3. Jester. Jester.
Copy. Switching to 2.3.
Alright. So, as I was saying, with that autopilot switch engaged, you no longer have trim functionality, but the aircraft is going to remember the last position of your flight controls. Okay, it's going to hold that position. Similar to the trim and the Huey, when you think about it, it's exactly how the Huey works. You know, so when you trim it, it locks it to where you are, and then any put after that is extra. Okay. So once again, we're in a nice bangle here, a nice climb, and my hands and feet are off the controls. I'm letting the aircraft do all the work for me here. We can even take it a nice time to do a photo op. Okay? Gotta love those moments. Alright, and you still have authority, so I'm going to start putting the nose down a bit. Bring our ascent rate down. I'm just going to keep trimming. Now by trimming, I just mean I'm adding pressure on the stick. That's all I'm doing. Waiting for us to come around for our waypoint. You can see that our ascent rate, we got about 100 feet, give or take, 100 feet a minute. Oh, now we do have more than that. But either way, you guys catch the gist on that. It makes it real handy when flying in formation, things like that, you know, where you just sort of want minimal control of the controls there. Makes it a little bit easier to manage that. So we should start coming up on waypoint 3 here. So I'm going to start straightening her out here. Reduce our turn a little bit. And it took a little bit of getting used to using it like this because you expect the aircraft to behave differently when your hands on their controls. But for those precision movements, it's kind of cool. Alright, and let's go ahead and bring that down. Get her out of that climb. And then what we can do is we're going to come down here and we're going to hit our altitude button. And now I'm going to press the nose wheel steering button. Okay, and you can see the autopilot reference button there. That means we're ready to initiate an autopilot program. So I'm pressing the nose wheel steering button, and the aircraft should center out on our current altitude. Now sometimes there's a little bit of deviation, but it still makes it possible to go heads down. So I mean, you can see there's still a little bit of a climb. Some of that's going to be airspeed. Remember, as our airspeed changes, the geometry of the wing is going to change, lift is going to change, so you still have to compensate for that. She's a very hands-on aircraft to fly. You're constantly hands-on, okay? All right, so we've gone over how to look at the how to do our waypoints once they're programmed in, and I'll show you guys in the next tutorial how to get Jester to set up waypoints mid-flight and how to title them. We'll probably do that partially in the mission editor as well. You can see the tack can here is going nuts again, okay? So if we come down here, let's go to our tack can, and let's see if we can't find my carrier this time. So I believe he's on 74 X-ray. And boom, there he is. We picked him up this time. So you can see the tack hand is now indicating the direction to the carrier, and you can see your tack hand indication right here. Now if we come down here and go to tack hand mode, okay, you can see you now get your angle off reference, your heading, okay, and your distance meters and scale. I can't remember what the scale is on that though, so I'm not gonna comment on that just yet. And your bearing from the selected tack hand. Okay, so we'll go over the tack hand much further in detail when we get into all the different things that tack hand is used for. Automatic carrier landing, locating your carriers, locating your bases, locating air-to-air sources, refueling. There's a lot that tack hand is involved with. Your data link especially. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I tried to make this one as short as possible. So just remember, use Jester to set up your waypoints. Your waypoint indication is both going to be on your HSD. If you are, oops, that was stupid, but that'll be all right for a minute. If we go into the TID mode, you can see your waypoint there. There's waypoint 3 flying past us there. You guys see that? So those little 2 hashed lines, I'll bring it back around, hopefully without dying. Okay, so you can see that it's got sort of the 2 runways. There you go, the dot in the center and the 3 that identifies waypoint 3, so you can still see your waypoints on the TID if you are in that mode. Remember your heading and bearing indicators, bearing and heading indicators for the, or track indicators for the tack hand. Here's our range to the tack hand station, okay, and the course of the carrier, which actually is, I believe, is about due north of your tack hand track. If we go back into destination, this is our waypoint configuration. Okay, so use destination to fly your waypoints, tack hand to track your tack hand sources. All right, and then to come out of everything, we're just going to hit our autopilot reference button again and disengage the autopilot system to regain full authority of the aircraft. All right. Leave questions and comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. If I missed anything, guys, please point it out. I love the collaboration of the channel. I am not an expert by any means. As you guys all know, this thing just came out a few days ago, so it's very possible that I'm missing information or omitting anything. So point that stuff out to me. I want to know it, okay? And I'll do just as I did before and correct it in the next video. I'll catch you guys next time. Have a wonderful week.